Hi, we're down here at the Seattle Boat Show. My name is Jon Lawrence, and I'm with Raider Boats, and we're going to take you through the top 10 reasons that makes the Raider Offshore unique in class. We're going to start with number one. One of these videos, if you're seeing this one for the first time, we're doing it for every model we build. So I'm really trying to highlight things that are unique that only we do or very, very few manufacturers do. The offshore, it starts getting a little bit tough. There's a lot of us in this game, and a lot of builders are really putting a great foot forward. And so the mainstay builders are all really representing fairly high quality product, and they're doing a lot of similar stuff. So I'm going to be covering a number of things, a number of differences about Raider that might still be more relative to other brands and more comparative to other brands in a bigger scheme than it was before. So the field gets a little bit tighter with this, but hang tight. But at number one here, hull design. This is something I haven't dove into on the other boats, but running a boat offshore, when you get caught in big water, if this is something you're new at, you haven't done a lot, or if this is something that you've done often and you've got thousands of hours of running a boat on the ocean, you're probably, in that case, you're probably going to be very familiar with what's called broachy, or a broachy hull, or a broaching tendency. And that's where, when you're going in big swells, ocean conditions, following seas predominantly, is when you come off of a swell, you enter the next one, and the force of the water behind you starts pushing the boat. What happens is your stern starts to shift because your nose stays planted. The hull stays planted in that one position, and so it turns sideways, and it kind of wants to lean into it real heavy. Any boat can do it. So this is not something like, extremely rare for a boat. The flatter your hull, typically, the less likely it is, but then it starts floating around. So it's really a merriment of a lot of things. But by and large, the sharper your bow entry goes, the more it's going to be unpredictable. And so ride quality is about mitigating impact, one, but also ease of use. And what I found, I've ran fairly broachy hulls in my career, and those boats, when they're unpredictable, your awareness and alertness as a captain is so much higher. So your mental fatigue at the end of the day, you don't really think about it when you're doing it, but you get back to the dock and you're just more tired. Shifting into boats that are more predictable, where it does exactly what you expect it to do, you kind of can relax. And so what I found myself with the Raider hull is, and this is when I bought the company, so keep in mind, I am the owner of Raider, but we did buy it from somebody that was the kind of the curator of the hull design, and then we took it to the whole next level. We've changed everything, changed the angles. This has got a bunch of modifications. We fine-tuned it. But one of the things that I loved about the whole design of Raider was the predictability. He really nailed the merriment of everything. We needed to tighten up the hull, make it a little bit sharper. We changed a little bit of the angles of the rocker of the hull and just fine-tuned it is what we did. But the basis and premise was really there. But when running in the ocean, it was predictable. I knew what the hull was going to do. And it was something that I realized was, when I'm running a boat otherwise, there's a lot more stress involved in it in rough water. But I found myself in rough water with one of these. It was just far more predictable. And so it was way more comfortable. I could relax. And I knew what the boat was going to do. There was no second guessing it. And that's really where our whole design comes into play. So you've got a 45-degree bow entry in the front. And that's the cut up in here is really aggressive. It's also a deep hull. We carry big shoulders in the forefront as well. And then we carry that. The bow is going to be deeper. And as we cruise to the back of the boat, it's actually going to be, it's called rocker. We start rolling the hull back so it makes the stern settle down, brings the nose up more. And then on this one, this is a little bit unique. So we on all of our other boats, we go to full width offshore brackets. And that's how we used to build a Raider. Here, until a couple years ago, we had a really wide offshore bracket, which made the offshore run very flat. And so it was the presentation of the boat was very flat. And it cut well, it performed great, but I wanted to have more of a proud attitude just from the feeling when I'm running. So while I'm running that boat offshore, I wanted to be able to stand at the helm or sit at the helm and have kind of that feeling that I'm looking down on things, not that I'm looking straight at it. Our Sea Raider is awesome. So it's a similar hull design, full width offshore bracket, different geometry topside on the hull, and you feel like you're tucked into like a sports car. And it's kind of, I call it the Ford Raptor for those Ford haters, bear with me, but I call it the Ford Raptor. So where that thing is super sporty, it's predictable, it goes anywhere. This thing turns into more of a tank. And so you have a much more perched, elevated position, better visibility looking down in the water, and more decisive when it's picking and choosing where you're running into swells. But that predictability is key. You got a great cut in the front. You're going to find most of them are going to be in that zone. Because we don't run a big chine flat hole, so a big chine flat, and if you're seeing on this on YouTube or if you're on scanning one of these QR codes on one of the signs, you might not see this, but jump onto YouTube, and I've got a video walking us through reverse chines or chine flats. That's going to be something, if you're at a trade show, you're probably hearing it nonstop. And one of the big things that people say is, oh, the chine flat boat or a reverse chine hole gives you a better ride. It doesn't. It gives you better stability. Jump on that video. It's a great explanation of it. Hopefully it gets you all the details you need. But this is not a hole that has a big reverse chine. And so you're not getting that pounding effect that's happening from that chine flat. Because remember, you got a lot of energy going into a swell. And when you slap down those big flat sections of that chine, it's going to give you maximum stopping power versus allowing you to slowly enter in and dissipate your speed and be more gradual with your throughput. So you're going to punch through a swell more than get launched over top of it. And so we don't have that. So I'm not going to go super aggressive in the bow. The more aggressive you go in the bow, the more you have a need for that, because the broachy tendencies I was talking about is if you go to like a 55-degree bow, you need to incorporate a really long, wide reverse chine in towards the front of the boat, because what happens is as that stern wants to swing around, the whole nose of the boat will actually kind of dip down. And so as it's dipping down, you're going to be counter steering away from it, moving your throttle and readjusting. And it's kind of an eerie feeling, but the reason why you need that big chine flat is as you dip down, you need that buoyancy pushing back at you. So it levels the boat back out. If you didn't have that, the boat would want to try to start, it wouldn't roll, but it would want to. It would be a lot more freaky, to say the least. And so the more aggressive you go in the bow, the more you need that chine flat to be able to accommodate and prevent that measure. And so with our holes, it's going to be just a gradual straight cut. And then we're going to lay the stern out in the back more, and we're going to add that rock and roll to really settle that boat in. But it's just a unique hole design, and that's something that if you're on Facebook, jump on Facebook, jump on the owners forum, check it out, contact owners, and you're going to get people that give their take, that have ran other boats, that really can talk about the uniqueness that we offer in ride. It's not a gimmicky thing. It's just straight. You're going to get straight answers from owners that have ran a variety of holes. But the predictability is one thing that I will earmark, and having, I ran a 30-footer last year all season. That's the plan for this year too. And this thing is awesome. I used to say that the Sea Raider was my favorite model. Since the changes and adjustments we made here a few years ago, man, this offshore takes the cake, and it is fantastic to run offshore. It's super comfortable to ride in, and the fishability of it is off the charts. So that was number one, pretty long-winded. Bear with me. Number two. So I'm going to hit number 2 and number 3 together. Number 2 is going to be chine weld outs and overall weld on the hole. So your weld quality, something to look at when you're observing a lot of boats. All of these welds through here are all full-length welds. So the guys do it in one pass. I don't allow them to stop. They can't go take a break. They're not going to weld a couple feet here. You're going to see starts and stops because they're shifting their feet as they weld and as they're working down the boat. But you're not going to see, a drag weld becoming a dime stack going back to a drag weld. You're going to see really clean, even welds all the way through. And remember, they're done in one pass. It will take an entire guy on my crew, an entire finish welder, a full day to do the weld out the exterior perimeter of this boat, because you're fighting heat, you're fighting all types of stuff. But you kind of start over here, then you go to the other side and work the bottom chine. You come back over here as it cools off, do the bottom chine over here. You go to the other side of the boat, do the top chine, and you're bouncing all over the boat, trying to let things cool down and settle. But that weld quality is pristine. But like I've done in our other boats, this is a full chine weld out. So you got an extrusion here, which is a solid stock of aluminum, where your bottom sheet comes into a slot and your side sheet goes into a slot, and you weld on the inside of the boat. Most manufacturers are also welding on the outside of these as well. In this offshore side, you don't see it in the smaller boats, but the offshore start getting the plate thicknesses I talk about in the other videos, where it's very common. So you can add that extra weld out and not worry about oil canning the sides. But that's something you're going to notice with the Raiders, is you're always going to have a little bit of movement to side sheets and stuff on aluminum boats, but you notice the Raiders are going to be pretty tight. We're not putting those pre-flex or bends in the side of the boat to stiffen it up. We're actually putting structure in there and making it a lot stronger, and doing it by plate thickness. So weld quality is one. Take a really good close look at that, and Rosario can step through and kind of do a close-up of some of the weld seams on this particular boat so you can see it, and probably just a couple others. You see it's not unique. Different guys are building all these boats. The third thing that I mentioned, we're gonna do 2 and 3 here, but the third thing is plate thickness. Plate thickness is big. Your 1/4 inch bottom, that should be the standard with every boat you're looking at. I don't think anybody else is doing less than that. There might be a builder doing it, but keep in mind, if you're looking at all the offshore boats, like the true mainstay offshore boats, it's all going to be 1/4 inch bottom. So that's going to be the commonality. Getting much thicker than that is just not needed. You know, you're going to see boats 35, 38 foot commonly built in that. And when I say 35 to 38, I'm talking 35 to 38 by like 12, 13, 14 wide. You rarely see it jump up into a thicker material than that. But 1/4 inch bottom is going to be the mainstay. The side sheets, we're going to see some variance. You're going to see both 160 and 190 side sheets. So bear with me, I'm going to grab some plate. So here's the plate differences. And I'm going to come up close to the camera here, but you've got 4 different plate thicknesses. I don't know if you can see that really well, Rosario, but you've got 1/4 inch on the bottom. This is 190 right above it. This is 160. The third one up on the top one is 125. You're going to see the cabin is fully welded out with 125. This is what you're going to see on the side sheets of most of your boats that are smaller than 24 foot and under. Quite frankly, some of the manufacturers, you're going to see 125 and 28 foot and under, but that's going to be a side sheet thing. We're using this on the cabin walls. We're using this on interior boxes. We're using this on your window areas, stuff like that. Then you jump into the 160. This is where you're going to start seeing rare that it's done on the smaller boats in the side sheets. This is something that you're going to see commonly in some of the offshore products on their side sheets. And so you're getting into a couple brands that are running this. Side sheets only, 125 on the cabins. And we're using this on our fuel tanks. This is the thickness we're running on our fuel tanks. And then we use this kind of sparingly. There's not much use on the offshore for us on the 160. Then we jump into 190. This is going to be the thickest you're going to find in this category of side sheets. So I'm going to put those side by side. The 160 and the 190, you can see it side by side. It's kind of hard in these videos to really get a shot of that, but the number's not that different. But if you're standing here and I gave you this plate, there's a big difference in what it does. But that 190 plate is going to hold rigidity a lot better. It's going to handle the heat from the weld out far better. But it's just going to be tough as nails. It's also going to add weight. It's going to make that boat heavier, which is going to give it a far better ride. And so weight is a big deal, but that 190 plate is super robust. That's going to be a differentiator you're going to find. Very few manufacturers using 190 plate on the side sheets. That is what we are doing standard. It's not an upgrade, it's just what it is. And then you get into the whole bottom. Like I said, everybody's running that. This is the 190 and 250 comparison. 190 on bottom, 250 on the top side there. That's what you're finding. So that plate thickness is a big deal. That allows for the weld out. That allows for the self-bailing deck to be welded out. You'll notice if you come into the booth or you go see a Raider at a dealership or something, you're going to notice a lot of weld lines that kind of print through. And so it's straight lines all the way through. We're on the internal side of the boat. We're drag welding those seams, but that gives you ultimate rigidity and makes it super tough. You impact a dock, you have anything around those points, it's going to really structure it. But what I found, if you don't have some sort of a structure, about every 12 inches or so about every 1 square foot of plate, you start getting it to want to move an oil can. And so you're going to find this if you cruise the show. You're going to find this as you cruise shows and look at other brands. You'll see stiffeners on the inside of the gunnels, on the side sheets on the inside of the boats, and you're going to see them either welded in place, or you'll see some manufacturers are gluing it in place. And so if you don't see a bunch of weld marks or tacks all the way down or a single weld seam, you're going to notice it's actually glued in place. They're gluing that in place to prevent welding and heat, and so preventing the oil canning. There's nothing, and some people might say there's too much weld out with that. No, this is how you'll see a commercial boat build that has been around for 50, 60 years. This is not something that is going to create too much welding. Gluing a structure piece on the side of the boat is actually a fascinating concept, and it seems to work pretty good, but that's one way you can structure it up a little bit. But we prefer to weld things out. We're a aluminum boat, welded boat. We're going to stick to that. So now we're on number 4. Number 4 is welded through holes. It's hidden on the backside of this boat, so I can't show you that very easily, but if you look at any of these other videos, you're going to see a round through hole on the side of the boat. That's this thing coming out. This is fully welded. So pretend I'm on the other side of the boat. That's going to be positioned right about here. And that's a full weld around the perimeter of this pipe. And this gets set inside the boat, and it's angled slightly down and angled forward slightly. So all of your water is going to come down into the box and drain forward. This is your bilge outlets here, and you got another one over here. So this is a 3 bilge outlet. This is your fish box outlet. So combined, all these pumps full tilt into this box will fully drain. But why this is important is if you look at a lot of the boats, is you're going to see plastic through holes, or some of them might be welded, but you're going to see all these different through hole penetrations, top side, up high on the gunnel. Generally, it's going to be up here, which on the side of the boat. You might see them down in here. But this is just one welded. It's pretty flush. One through hole welded with all of your pumps. Everything high loops into this, so the pumps come up. They come straight down, so nothing's going to fill this box and back feed back into your hole. So it's just going to protect and make sure everything gets out of the boat. But this is where, with the offshore, you got 3 bilge pumps in the transom area. Then you have 1 in the cabin. So you have 4 bilge pumps standard on an offshore boat that has a self-bailing deck. And so that's just redundancy in the system. We're building into it from the start. And it also has the chambered offshore bracket. Even though the bracket design is a little bit different, the bracket still is chambered like all of our other boats. It's just not quite as wide. It actually is close to the same width as what like a coastal and Sea Raider is, but because the boat is, well, as close to what a coastal is, but because the boat is wider, we do taper it in. And so we trimmed off about 10 inches of the offshore bracket on both sides. So about a 20-inch reduction to the width, and tuck the trim tabs underneath there. But that still is a chamber, still is fully sealed. That's where this bilge outlet comes into play. You really shouldn't be getting any leaks in there, but if it does, it's only in that area, then you can isolate a leak and figure out where the problem's at really easily. But that's the manifold system for the top side. Now below the deck, underneath the boat is where the rocket comes into place. This is called a standpipe. This is a U.S. Coast Guard inspected vessel styling. So you have, this is an ABYC, so American Boat and Yacht Council standard, is being able to support 500 pounds dead weight on a standpipe. And so this thing, when it's welded into the bottom of the boat, we've actually tested to 1,000 pounds of deflection to be able to handle deflection for 1,000 pounds. So this is well overrated. That's why we call it the rocket. But you have a stainless steel valve that screws on top of this with a shutoff lever. And that allows you to close the intake. So this is below the boat, the bottom of the boat. It sets up like that. And you can see where the spud sticks out the bottom there slightly. And then we TIG weld the bottom side that allows us to, in fact, I got that 1/4-inch plate right here. We marry it up like that. This is, you can see where it's married up just perfectly, and then we TIG weld around the outside. And when they punch a hole through that. So then that's fully welded to the bottom plate, and then it's fully welded the top plate. If this is the whole bottom inside the boat, this gets set in here, and then we weld up this edge all the way around the perimeter. So it's fully sealed, locked in place. This is going nowhere. But the benefit of that is if you're mooring, which are the bigger boats, you're getting into more of a boat that you might moor fairly often. So I keep my boat in the harbor all summer long. And when I leave, I leave out of town. So I'm not, Colville, Washington, where we build these boats, is not right next to the ocean. So it takes us about 9 hours, 8 hours to get to the coast. And so when I leave on Sunday night, we're going to shut off all these valves and we're going to walk away. And when I don't have these valves in my boat, I start worrying about it. And this is what I noticed before I did this, was I'd be back in Colville or I'd be back wherever I was at throughout the years. And I'd have that worry that something can go awry. When you're in the boat industry and you build boats, your biggest nightmare is probably your boat sinking. And so that's a terrifying thought. I don't ever want a boat to go down. And especially going down to something stupid like that. So we can prevent it. We can ease that mindset, and that really kind of stemmed from me, from mooring my own boat. What are the things that I worry about that I want to make sure that I can just check it off the box and say, hey, we're good. And then it's something that I maintain annually. I make sure there's some grease in there, make sure the valves opening, closing properly, super simple. And so this standpipe is super strong. You're going to have an inlet for raw water, and you're going to have an outlet up in the cabin. You're going to have easy access to that. So there's a big storage box inside the cabin. There's a door that drops down inside that storage box and gives you really easy access to the shutoff valve there. Then if you're running a bait tank or if you're running a washdown, which washdown standard, so it's going to have it in the back no matter what, that's where this comes in the back of the boat. And then you're welding scoop strain to the bottom side. So this is the guys over at Fraser Bronze, fantastic outfit, but this is a cast aluminum scoop strain, which is going to allow water to come through the grate and shoot up into the base of it with a standpipe underneath it, and that pipe towards the back of it, it forces water up into this standpipe, which is just going to supply your wash down while you're underway. A lot of times when you're underway, if you don't have a scoop strain, you're going to basically vapor lock this thing. It's not going to allow any water to come out of it, so it's going to stop the flow to any bait tank you have, any live oil you have, any raw water wash down, whichever. But when we get up on step and we go from point A to point B, let's say we albacore fishing is probably the best example, is it's a bloodbath. If you've never witnessed albacore fishing, look it up on YouTube. There's some cool videos, but it is super bloody. And so when you get done with a bait stop or an iron stop, we get everything back together. I typically hose off my gear, my bibs and stuff, and I hop back to the second station, get the boat back on plane or on the troll. So we troll about 7-8 knots. And so that gives me a little bit of an attitude to the boat. And we start trolling. We set the rods back out, and then guys grab the wash down pump and they start hosing that deck off. If you were vapor locking this and trying to wash the boat, you'd have to be grabbing buckets and tossing buckets while you're stagnant. Way easier while you're underway. So if you like to use a wash down pump underway, that's a big deal. That scoop strain is going to allow all that water flow you need. And so that's the water pickup, but this is the through holes that we use. On to the next one. All right, number 5, electrical systems, battery systems. You're going to see a couple things on this boat. Keep in mind, these offshores, they can be configured so many different ways. We have so many different options. There's really not one size fits all. We don't have package groups or anything like that. We have a litany of options that you can do. And so you're going to see stuff like this has got a transom bait tank on the back. That's something that is super applicable here in Washington. It's applicable in California. If you're in Oregon, if you're in Canada, Alaska, that's something you're not going to want to use at all or do. And so I'm not going to dive into those. We have a lot of unique things on this boat that's very pertinent to this fishery. So keep that in mind as you see it and as you see the layout and stuff. This might not be the right layout for you, but this is a 28-foot offshore, and this is a short cabin model, so you got a lot of deck space back here and tons of room to fish. Whereas, Alaska, for instance, or up in BC, how you guys are using the boats up there is not the short cabin design. Sure, we build some for up there, but it's the long cabin. You're wanting the stand-up marine head, the dinette, the galley, all that stuff, because you're staying for multiple days at a time. That makes total sense. Here in Washington, when we want to go out offshore and we want a fishing boat, a 28-foot offshore, we're leaving out of Westport, out of Nia Bay, out of La Push, out of Oahu, and we're running straight west. And when we're running due west, we're getting out to whatever, we're going to the canyon, we're going out offshore for albacore, 60, 70 miles, whatever it may be. And in those runs, there's no harbor, there's no islands, there's nothing. We are running straight into the Pacific. And so because of that, we don't really need the overnighting amenities. Sure, you can sleep at your boat at the marina, but for the most part, we're not looking to have the stove, have the head, the stand-up environment. We want deck space because we're fishing. So we're going to go, and a lot of times we're fishing 6 people on the back deck of these boats because, the reality of it, this is an expensive sport. And so we want to be able to take, 4 to 6 people that we enjoy fishing with all the time, and that typically you'll share the cost of fuel, you'll share the cost of bait and stuff. And so deck space is really critical for that. And but even if you're not, let's say you're a really generous individual and you're going to pay for the entire trip for everybody all the time, it's just nice to have fishing buddies on the boat. When you got 6 people fishing for albacore, you can be a lot more effective if you have the deck space for it. 4, you can get overwhelmed. The guy filming this right now, Rosario and I, we've been out offshore albacore fishing just by ourselves and had every rod hung on the gunnel with fish in just complete mayhem and chaos. And we had rod holders fighting fish on irons. They were popping off, and then they'd hook themselves back up. There's an iron hanging in the water. And so when you have more people, you can really capitalize on what's in front of you. And so that's where you see typically it's 4 to 6 guys and gals that are out there fishing in the size of boat. So deck space is really a big deal. But all that is me getting distracted. We're on number 5, so I'm going to get back to it, our electrical system. Here you see our batteries. It's not down low in a bilge, it's actually up high. There's a plate welded down below, so it's a pretty contained environment. And it's behind one of these starboard doors, starboard doors. But ignore this battery charger and stuff. This is for the show, so it's keeping everything going. But you got enough space for 4 batteries right there, so 2 houses and 2 starting batteries. This has just got 3 in it, and because we got the battery charger in that place. I do like this boat with 4, but 3 is fine too, but I do like 2 house batteries, so we like to do 4 and encourage doing 4 as much as we can. And but this is room for 4 batteries. Our electrical system back here, if you want to take a look at this, Rosario, this is a battery management system. And we talk about that is It's a breaker system, so you're not running with a bunch of fuses. You know, every boat will have some fuses, but that's a breaker system. But the management system is you got those switches and you got on and off, and then you have the yellow band, which is called emergency or combine. And that takes all three of your batteries, which are on three different banks. This is a twin engine configuration. We got twin 250s on the back of this. And so you got two engines. Each engine needs its own battery. So you have one battery, two battery, then you have your house side, which is your third battery. If you add a fourth, that'd be combined with your house side. So you can have up to four batteries, but it's three banks. With the three banks, when I'm offshore and you're drifting, so you got your main engines off and you're just drifting and fishing, you're still got electronics going, you got pumps going, you got washdown pump going, you got bait tank going, you got all that going. All that's going to draw from your house side. If your batteries were not isolated on independent banks, with your engine shut off, you're going to drain your house system, but it'll also drain your batteries on your starting batteries for your motors. And so if you start losing power on your house side, then you know, okay, I'm going low. Don't flip it to emergency mode. Fire up an engine, start an engine, get the amperage flowing back in. And so protecting that charging system is what's called the ACR. And it's an automatic charging relay. If you're at a trade show, go check it out. If you're at home, you're watching this on YouTube, Google ACR, and you're going to see it's from Blue Seas. And it's a great system, and that system will take the charge from your outboard, and it watches and regulates all the banks. So it's looking at your house bank and your starting bank, and it's saying, okay, your starting bank has over 12 volts. It's at 12.4 volts or 13.1 volts, whatever it is. It's full, but your house side is at 10.2. It's going to divert the charge and stop giving this power, and it's going to send it here to bring this up over 12 volts. Once this is at full power, it diverts the charge back to your house, to your starting side, your engine side, to keep the circuit going. And so it's a great battery system, very elaborate system, looks awesome. And with the breakers too, there's so many breaker slots. If you're using like a windlass system on the front, you want a breaker on that. You don't want a fuse on that. If you're running downriggers, breaker it. Don't fuse it. That's got breaker slots for it. It starts getting tight once you start adding a lot of stuff. You're doing like Tanic and bowls and stuff, and or any other electric reels, you're gonna have 30 amp fuses probably in that system, because it's gonna be hard to do 6 of those with breaker slots. You're gonna have to add more breaker positions, but it's a great way to go about it, because you're gonna trip those. Any electric motors doesn't know the difference. That's why you trip them all the time. Is the electric motor is gonna pull whatever is being supplied to it. So the breaker or the fuse is protecting the wiring. It's not protecting the motor. It's protecting the wiring. The motor will continue to pull. If it pulls over 30 amps, you're only wired to 30 amps. And so if you start pulling 40 or 50 amps, you're going to overheat that wire and you're going to smoke it. So that's where all the breakers kind of play. That's the importance of the breaker. So don't replace something with a bigger breaker. Don't do any weird stuff with your electrical. But this system is very elaborate, and it's fantastic. You should see this in most of the offshore boats, I think. I really haven't dove into the details of what's out there. But this is something to look for, check on it. Don't just ask, hey, does it have dual batteries? Does it have battery switch? Does it have 3 batteries, 4 batteries, whatever? Ask specifically. If it's a management system, does it isolate the banks, and how does it charge outside of that? So make sure you have ACR, make sure you have a fully isolating bank system, make sure you got breakers. That was number 5. We're now on to number 6. Okay, number 6. This is unique, and I'm excited about this with all of our models, because we've been working on this for a couple of years. Anodized railing. This is what you see in yachts offshore. This is what you see down in Florida. They have full companies that do nothing but weld anodized tuna towers, T-tops, you name it, rocket launchers, everything out of anodized aluminum, because the stuff is amazing. Aluminum is such a fantastic metal to work with, but especially if you got an aluminum boat, you don't want a stainless steel rail. So keep that in mind. You're going to see people that want that high-end shine, or companies that want that high shine and beautiful look to a polished rail, are going to tend to go towards stainless steel. And when they go to stainless steel, now you can't weld that to aluminum, so you bolt it in place. Hardware, you need to get away from hardware as much as you can on aluminum. You got dissimilar metals. Yeah, stainless steel's fine. You can Tef gel it. You can do coatings to protect it, but that has to be maintained, and you have to continually stay up on that maintenance. And so we try to prevent as much hardware as we can, and so we've isolated majority of our hardware. But the biggest thing is we're welding, adding rails posts everywhere. If you just look at just this one downrigger pad or downrigger rail here, you've got 3 positions that would need screws and bolts and everything to secure this down. But when you're welding it, it's welded. But the great thing about this, and it's kind of dark in here, so bear with me. But Rosario, if you want to come over to these rod holders here, that really shows the anodization and how bright and shiny that is. It's a mirror shine on the boat. And that's a finish level that's going to last a really, really long time. And this, the other thing that you're going to see, if you ever seen Austin Powers, they got one of those like Austin Power carts with a little deck, and they just took out something in our booth. Sorry for the commotion. The anodized railing, that high sheen and shine lasts a super long time with anodization. What you're seeing with most other manufacturers is Schedule 40 pipe. And so you can buy it by the bundle from just about anybody. It's aluminum pipe. You roll it into place, you weld it down, and then they take Scotch-Brite. This is kind of like a sandpaper, but it's a kind of pad form. And you got different levels of finish based on the different colors. And they'll rub that Scotch-Brite down the rails and down the posts to give it a uniform kind of mill finish look to it. And it looks good, but the problem with saltwater is going to start degrading that. And aluminum's natural tendency our natural course of action for protecting itself is called oxidation. So where things start looking kind of blotchy and chalky looking, that's anodizing, or not anodizing, sorry. That's oxidizing, and that's aluminum's natural way to protect itself, and that's great. That's a great thing for aluminum to do. It just doesn't look good. It doesn't look nice. And so anodizing protects it to where the aluminum doesn't need to oxidize. Nothing's attacking it because nothing's getting to it. The aluminum is stuck in that stagnant state of, not really stagnant, kind of stagnant, but in a high polished finish of a mirror shine. And so the anodized railing is true throughout, all these grab rails here, the bow rails in the front, the rocket launchers across the top, the trees on the side, the downrigger rails, everything pipe-wise that we're doing on this boat that is a railing to grab a hold of, to mount things on, all of it's anodized, and that's super unique. I don't know of anybody else doing that on the market in aluminum boats. It took a couple years to figure it out. We got to buy it by a semi-truckload from the East Coast, and so it's really unique for Raider. Really is a high shine, high sheen look that is beautiful, and it's going to last you a really long time. And the longer your boat lasts looking good by finish things like that, I think 10 years down the road, if your boat holds a very high polished level of finish, your boat's going to sell for more money. The value of your boat's going to be increased. And why does that matter to us? Well, 10 years down the road, if your boat's worth more money, then our boats are as well. And so this has been a play for us that we've been working towards, because it really is going to intensify the value of the product for a long time. Now we're on to number 7. Okay, I got 2 items here. This is actually going to be number 7 and number 8. I'm going to throw a little freebie in here that's not going to be number, but you see all this trim. This is the freebie. Bear with me. All this trim around the hatch, around the edges here. Most companies you're going to see just raw aluminum. Aluminum that's that Scotch-Brite that I was talking about. They give it that uniform look, and they screw it in place. This, if you take a notice and you're familiar, this is actually anodization as well. So we send this out, we get a black dipped anodized. It looks beautiful, it's great trim work. It's not powder coating. Powder coating is going to actually chip away and corrode. It doesn't last very long. Anodizing lasts a very long time. Same thing on this one. This is a unique layout. It's got a custom table base, but that's the same thing. That's anodized black as well. But we're jumping down in here. This is the next numbers is in your hatch. Ignore the hatch. This hatch is pretty cool, but ignore this hatch. This is a big storage area down in the floor here. But down in your substrate of your floor, most boats you're going to find is going to be plywood with a vinyl over top of it. That's what we do on a 21-foot boat. This is an offshore. Let's get with the program. This floor, below this flooring, so I'll start from the top because you can see it. This topside stuff right here, this is called LVP flooring. This is luxury premium vinyl flooring. This is, if you're going to go build a $600,000, $800,000 home, $1.5 million home, unless you really love the maintenance of real wood, which nobody really does. This stuff looks like real wood. It's hard. Most people can't tell. They'll ask. This is a synthetic material. It's impact resistance and it's waterproof. We fully lay this in. And so if you have a bad spot that gets broken or chipped or something happens, you can pop that little piece out and replace it. But it's planked flooring. And then it's sealed by the groove that it connects. It seals at each seam. And then we actually seal it along the perimeter. So it's really sealed all the way on the floor. So all last couple of years, I've had this on my boat. So we've been testing it. This is a new thing for us this year. I've been testing this on our boats for a couple of years myself. And we're tracking albacore blood inside from the back deck. As much as we try to prevent it, at the end of the day, I've got scales, I got blood, I got everything. And we actually just take a hand rag with some Clorox cleaner and just wipe the floor down when we're done. And you can do it really quick, and guys will hit the cabin and work their way out, and we'll let it air dry, and then we're done. And I never got a musky smell. I never got a fishy smell inside my cabin. I'm mooring in a marina. I don't have easy access for keeping everything super clean. and it held out fantastic. And so this flooring has been something I have absolutely loved, and it's been we've had it as an option kind of for a couple years, for last year, but it wasn't really spoken of a whole lot. But then we just decided we're going to go all out and make this a standard. And so that's what's on top. Now on the bottom of the substrate, you can't really see it. I don't even know why I opened this hatch other than it's a big hatch and I like to sit down and get real here. The flooring down below is all welded plate. There's no wood in this cabin other than the boxes and the seats, or not the boxes, but the V-berth cushions and the seat cushions. Those are wood. But when it comes to the floor, there's no wood on this. This is 190 welded plate. And not only that, but we weld it to the perimeter. And I'm sitting here thinking like, I'm going to be able to show you guys all this. But the flooring kind of hides it. So I might have to come back around sometime on a boat we're welding out so you can see this. But wood is really important material if you're screwing boxes in place. So if I was screwing all of these fixtures down, and these boxes, the seat boxes, this box here, this bench seat here, if we were screwing it down to the floor, aluminum would be actually the worst material you can use. To secure a seat box to aluminum, you need either riv nuts or you need to through bolt it. And if you can't access the through bolt, then you're asking for problems down the road. If you're doing a riv nut, which is where you pilot drill the hole, and it's a rivet that basically has a threaded insert, and then you take a bolt and you screw it down into it and it locks it in place. The problem is the outside edge of that rivet is ribbed, and that's what keeps it from spinning, so it locks it in place as you're tightening the hardware. Well, as soon as those ribs start breaking free, or you get corrosion or something happens around it, and it just doesn't hold up. Keep in mind, I tell this to people all the time, on a showroom floor, anything looks good. Most manufacturers, if you can't build a nice looking boat, then you're not trying hard enough. Most boats that are really trying to present themselves as a high quality boat, they're going to build a beautiful boat. It's going to look great on a showroom floor. Then we take these things and think of, if boating is something new to you, if you've ran offshore for a long time, you'll know. You beat the tar out of these things. But if your favorite pastime is off-roading, compare that. If you get into off-roading and jeeping, or whatever you've got off-road, I don't off-road other than destroying my trucks while I'm hunting. But if you get off-road, you're going to realize pretty quick that you're going to be replacing some parts. You're going to break things. Things are going to happen. And it's because you're putting a vehicle in an environment that it is not designed for. We design it for this environment, which is why we do what we do. But a lot of manufacturers don't take the same steps to preventative measures. And so if you're screwing down into aluminum deck or using riv nuts or through bolting or something, you're going to ask for fatigue and failure, because the amount of force that I'm a big guy. You can clearly see I'm a big guy. I take up this entire aisle space. When I'm sitting on this suspension seat and I'm running 30 knots through the ocean, I'm fatiguing everything on this entire box. And so if I don't build it to a full extreme, I break it. So I personally am testing this stuff. These S5s, I love these suspension seats. But this entire layout was designed by me a couple years ago, and I've put almost 600 hours on this design and running through rough water. And I don't go easy on things. And so I'm looking for the fail points to make sure that it's going to last a long time. But that's also why I've had seats fail on me. With wood, in a wooden floor environment, that's why most manufacturers are doing it, is the hardware, when you screw down into it, wood's hydraulic. So it's actually going to grab and bite that hardware, and it's going to hold tight on that hardware, and it's not going to want to back out very easily unless you screwed something up on, you drilled the wrong size hole in a pilot hole or something. But when you're running aluminum, it's going to want to shear away if you're screwing it down. So that gets me to the point that I'm trying to make is not only is the plate on the floor fully welded down to your structure, but all of your seat boxes are welded in. There's not a single screw holding a seat box or a fixture in place. This is 100% welded in. And so your seat boxes are welded into your floor. Your floor is fully welded to the outside perimeter of the boat. Now imagine, if you build a shell of a boat, of an open container, think of like a bucket, and you just put stuff in the bucket. You can kind of tap on the sides of the bucket. The bucket, you can kind of squeeze it. It moves around a little bit. You're not going to squeeze a boat and move it, but think of the forces you're dealing with in the ocean on something that weighs 7,000, 8,000 pounds, 9,000 pounds, is when you're colliding with those swells, you might not feel the movement, but there's going to be some movement there. When you weld 190 plate, which is extremely rigid, and you weld it in the side sheets of the boat in your cabin area, and you weld the full perimeter around it, and that locks everything in place. that alone makes a big difference in how the boat will perform and how you'll feel. And so we do that as the substrate. That you don't even see that. That's not visible. There's been a number of people that, in talking to them, they've asked me some questions come up on their flooring and how do they maintain it, various different stuff. And I've mentioned, below that it's all aluminum, and they were shocked. They had no idea. They bought the boat and they had no idea that it was aluminum below the deck. And so when you're dealing with plywood and you got the opportunity for wood, those two differences, it's monumental. Go find a commercial boat builder and ask them to do a plywood floor inside your cabin. Would they do it if you asked? Probably. Would they advise you to not do it? Most likely. The plywood floors in offshore boats is really only a thing of some production manufacturers that's trying to get stuff out the door as quick as possible. It is very simple to do. It's way less money. There's a reason why we don't weld the floors down in the smaller boats, but we do it as an option. So you want a 21 Delta with a welded floor, by all means, let's do it. I don't care. You want this flooring on a 21 Delta? We can do it. It's just expensive. So keep in mind, you're in a 28-foot offshore. It's a different price point. And that's why you're not seeing it in smaller boats, is because I can't compete by welding out an entire aluminum floor and doing LPV flooring in a small 21, 22, 23-foot boat. And so that's why we're not doing it across the board. That's why the wood does come into play, because that's what the entire industry is doing. We're trying to be competitive. But in this, we feel like we can be really competitive, yet still offer you a far better product by having the welded floor and that LPV flooring. So that covered those two items. Now we're on to the next. Okay, now we're on to number 9. Number 9 is going to be kind of all-encompassing with the interior. We talked about flooring just a minute ago. We talked about how we weld the seat boxes down. We build fishing boats. You can camp in these. You can do overnight. You can do long trips. You can do whatever. But we focus on longevity and finish. You're going to see cabinetry that's made. There's great cabinet makers. But if you look at a lot of these offshore boats, what they're built out of, if you break the flooring or the wood down, it's not solid wood. They're going to be doing, assembling the cabinetry they're putting in your boat. That's like a Formica tops on them and stuff. What you're seeing here this is all welded aluminum. This is painted. It's not carpeted on the outside, and so it gives it a really good look. There's a couple little custom things in this boat. Like we took this step here and we made it in a little storage on that seat box step. Pretty slick, but that's something we can do by request. But then you get the tops too. So not only is everything welded aluminum, you get diamond stitching on the upholstery throughout here, but then your top. So if you're doing a dinette or you're doing a galley top, we're doing all Corian countertops. So we're not dealing with any Formica top. There's not, we did beautiful wood tables for a while, and it just got hard to source to somebody that can do hardwood and then do it right, because wood's hydraulic. It's going to want to move on you with temperatures and moisture environments changing and stuff. So it's a constant battle and fight. So we just said, we're going to stone. We're going to do Corian, and we've been doing Corian for a while. 0 failures. It looks beautiful. It's a solid surface. This, again, what would you put in your home? You are buying a custom home, essentially. This is, what an offshore boat is. This is a big investment. And what Rosario mentioned was like manufactured homes versus custom homes. It's a great example. I was just talking about, this is like buying a custom home in a lot of ways. Sure, it's not a big home, but this is a lot of fabrication, a lot of time, a lot of man hours in this build. And what you're dealing with is similar. And if you're going to have cabinetry built for your home, let's say you're going to redo your kitchen, or you're going to buy, you got a custom home you're making, are you going to go buy a pre-manufactured cabinets from IKEA? Maybe you do. Maybe you have, and they're very reasonable, they're economical, but nobody can deny the value difference between somebody custom building you cabinetry that's going to last you a lifetime. So your home can sometimes become a generational thing, and people that have had hardwood custom made cabinetry in their homes, that lasts forever. And versus, in a kitchen, you're doing a kitchen, a lot of times you buy a home and it has those pre-manufactured cabinetries. A lot of times people are knocking them out. You go to IKEA, go buy a full cabinetry setup. It's not made to last. It's made to look good. It's made to look, retro, or up to date, or whatever the, urban, I don't know, whatever the thing is that they're into these days. But it's made for cost effectiveness, and it's made for speed of manufacturing. It's not made for longevity and quality. That's where you get into more of a custom cabinetry, custom home. That's kind of the same as what we're doing here. This is fully welded in place. Everything is welded together. There's no screws, there's no hardware. There's no cheap wood that isn't really solid wood. This is something that's going to last you a really long time. Solid surface countertops, this Corian is going to last you a really long time. So like I said at the beginning, you know, all of the boats in the offshore categories, the main players, are all going to be fairly common. I'm not going to brand name drop, but there's some that might seem like they're up at the top, but they're really not even anywhere close when you break down the quality of the build. But something that, you know, things to keep in mind is, you know, what's the warranty of the boats? Well, ours are lifetime structural. You got a problem? Give me a call. My cell phone, 503-798-6818. Call it. Shoot me a text message. I will respond. I don't hide behind layers and layers of individuals to prevent people from getting to me. We do a lifetime structural warranty. If you got a failure, call us. If you're a guide or charter, you have a failure, call us. We don't change our warranty because we build it so robust. Keep in mind with that. That's something to look at really closely, where a lot of builders will kind of cut based on the use of the boat, they'll cut the warranty out. And the average user is not putting a ton of time on their boat. They might put a couple hundred hours. The adventures they have with 100 hours a year is worth it, but you're never going to fatigue a boat in 100 hours a year. That's why we really target more of that die-hard fishing. You know, the person that's using it 100 hours a year and they're camping, they're biking, they're doing all that stuff. We have a lot of clients doing that as well. But if you turn around and sell that boat to a commercial outfit, to a guy fishing, you know, charter fishing in Alaska, and he's got a 6-pack charter operation, the boat's going to perform just as well for that type of an application. And so those are things that you kind of keep in mind, but that's a distraction. This is a standing configuration. So if you're at a show, this may or may not be on display. This is kind of a custom setup. And this is what I love this. I run long runs offshore. And so as you see me sitting here, this is how I sit here, is I got a bolster seat right here. Everything's pulled back. My throttles are down and I'm running just like this. And I run in a combined mode with my controls. These are Suzuki controls, Suzuki 250s. I run everything in combined mode. So I just grip this one throttle and I'm running both engines, and I can steer and do everything just right here real easily, from this position while I was standing. Or I can turn it into a sitting configuration. I can flip this down and I can sit right there. I'm a big guy. I prefer to stand. But so, I mean, last year, and the gentleman behind the camera was with me on a bunch of trips. I maybe sat down for maybe an hour or two out of 300 something hours I put on the boat. I don't sit and run. I stand and run. It's super comfortable for me, but that's not for everybody. Some people like to sit and run, and that's how a standard setup is for our boats. And so we can do either one, but I like this. But more so about that, if you want to kind of come around my shoulder here, is the layout of the dash. If I'm a 6-foot individual, so I'm not overly tall, I got tons of headroom here. So if you're 6'6", not a problem. But if I was a lot taller, I still have great visibility. I'm looking somewhat downward at the water in front of me, but I have all my electronics right here. So as I'm navigating, I can touch screen whatever I want. This is 2 12-inch screens at the dash. I have all the accessibility here. I can see GPS, I can put engine data here, I can put sonar here, GPS here, radar overlay, radar split, whatever you want to do. It's all right here, but it's not up in my way. I've got nothing up in my screen. I can see the trim from just standing here. The trim of the window, I can see all the way to here. I only lose this little corner right above the trim in visibility, which then I'm looking at the front deck. That doesn't make a difference for me. And so I can be standing here running, have great visibility. All my switches are right here, easy access. This is a Reactor 40 this is a 50 GHC 50 screen. And so this is for the Reactor 40 autopilot, which if you've never ran an autopilot on your boats, run it. You'll thank me. Trim tab controls are right here. Fuel gauge, honestly, ignore your fuel gauge. Fuel gauges on boats are terrible. Program it into your Garmin. You can tell your Garmin how much your fuel capacity has, and it's going to pull the data from your engines, and it'll reduce the fuel you have. So if you have burned through your engines 100 gallons on a trip, and you have 100, like on this boat, you have a 160 gallon fuel tank, or on a 30 footer, you have a 190 gallon fuel tank, then you're going to have 60 or 90 gallons left. And so it's really easy to figure it out versus an analog fuel gauge. It's a tapered design, and you're not going to see a true relation to it. But here at the control station, I have all of the visibility I want. When I'm docking and I come up to a dock, I can slide this window out and I can see the dock real easy. I can turn into it, shift, do everything right here. From a really simple standpoint, this suicide knob is fantastic. This is an all stainless steel steering wheel. If you got just a normal steering wheel, you're kind of doing this thing back and forth. But having my controls that I can shift one in, one out, I can kind of crab walk the boat sideways into a slip. Everything's right here. I'm not having to screw around with it a whole lot. I love the layout of this, the comfort of this setup. And so that's something that you don't really think of. If you got controls up here, think of this. As you can see, I'm just comfortably relaxing, and my arm just rests right there. And I can hold this control. So when I'm running, I can have full control here and be running my throttles no problem and stand. I actually stand like this all the time when I'm running on autopilot. Even in rough water, I can brace myself with my knees. But even if I'm sitting, it's just right there at my hands. I'm not up here. If I'm up here all the time, then I'm getting way more fatigued at the end of the day with my shoulder by reaching forward up on the dash. So having your controls down on the edge, you want it just kind of streamlined right off your side so you can kind of just rest your arm on it if you wanted to. And so this whole layout was designed and fine-tuned from me running, how comfortable it is offshore, and we just tweaked it and tweaked it and tweaked it because we're putting in, we're doing 12 to 15 hour days on the water. You get tired at the end of the day. Stuff like up on the helm, stuff like that doesn't really ever register in your mind until you are using that boat nonstop. And that's autopilot. I run autopilot because I discovered how much it sucks to drive a boat 70 miles offshore. So I go on my screens and I set my course and I hit go to, and all I do is run throttle. So I will sit here and just lean up against the console, and I'll be on my throttles, and I don't even turn my steering wheel. I watch for deadheads, I watch for debris, I watch for anything in front of me, sharks a lot of times offshore, whatever it may be, and I just run my throttle up and down the swells. That's how easy these things drive. When I talked about predictability at the beginning of it, I don't have to be white knuckling it and driving because the boat's getting pitched all over the place from the broachiness. This boat goes where it points. Where you want it to go, it'll go. And throttle takes control of the rest. So super easy to drive, really comfortable. And that's what I noticed, on the offshore. I designed a boat a few years ago, and I ran that all season, and I jumped back in an offshore, and that boat was beautiful. It ran fantastic. It was a beautiful boat. Had a great cut. One of the best riding aluminum boats I've ever built, and I've ever ran and been on. It was a fantastic running boat. But I went really sharp in the bow entry, and it was a little more broachy than what I was used to with the Raider hull. And so it would have that tendency to want to kind of hook a little bit and broach, and so you'd have to steer out of it. And once you've ran boats like that, it's not really that big of a deal. You get used to it. But I got in one of these boats. I got on a 30-footer after running that all season, and took a client out, and we went albacore fishing, and he's become a good friend of mine. Anyways, we run offshore, and he wanted me to run it all day the first day, and so I did. And the difference that we felt, sorry if this is super noisy in here, they're trying to set up for the show, but the difference that I felt at the end of that day was night and day. And it kind of goes leading into what I was talking about in prior, was when you've ran a boat that's predictable, the fatigue that you feel at the end of the day is way less, because you're not as having to be as mentally focused on every little nuance of what you're doing. I could be holding a conversation with the guys in the boat, laughing, goofing off, and as we're running offshore, but I'm fully attentive too. My sole focus isn't on picking how I take every single swell. I can just look at swells and know I'm not going to have any problem. Then all of a sudden I see a big one coming on us. I just throttle back a little bit. I don't need to go slam into it really hard. I see it coming in, I throttle back a little bit, and it predictably goes right over the top of it. It doesn't do anything funky. It doesn't shoot to the side. It stays true to the course. And so that's something you're going to see. If you run out of Westport, Washington, the boat I had last year it's a Sonic Gray. It's a Honda color with blackout. It was beautiful, but not a whole lot of people can keep up with me. We stay the course, and we run. And part of that is the predictability of the hull. I'm not second guessing. I'm not having a hard time picking through swells. And so anyways, I think that kind of covers it. It's 10 items. There's so much on these boats. Swing by one of these shows, talk to a sales guy at the dealerships, give us a call, shoot me a text message. Come chat with us about these boats. You're going to find if you get on a Raider boat and you take a good hard look at everything we do, it's going to be hard pressed to not see why Raider is at the top. There's not a whole lot that puts together the boat like we do, the way we do, and how we do it, and we really put every foot forward to build an outstanding product. And so thanks for your time. This has been Jon Lawrence at Raider Boats. And if you're on this on YouTube, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, follow us. You're going to see more and more coming. And I appreciate you guys for all the time. Have a good night.